So, what happens when the very system that's supposed to keep us safe is actually broken? Today, we are diving deep into the crisis in Alabama's prisons. It's a system that's at a major fork in the road, facing a choice between two completely different futures. And it all boils down to one huge question: do we build bigger walls, or do we focus on rebuilding human lives?
To really get why this is so urgent, we have to start with the human cost. These are the words of Tim Mathis. His son, Chase, died inside an Alabama prison. And that phrase he uses, deliberate indifference, that's not just a father's grief talking. It's a legal concept, a serious accusation. It means you believe the system knew how dangerous it was inside those walls and just chose to do nothing.
And Chase Malthus's death, well, it wasn't a fluke. It's part of a much bigger systemic failure. Look at this number: 277. That's how many people died in just 1 year. To put that in perspective, for every one person who dies in an average American state prison, 5 people die in an Alabama prison. That's a statistic that has the entire country watching. Eventually, things got so bad that the federal government itself had to step in. They argued that the conditions were so awful, they actually violated the U.S. Constitution, the Eighth Amendment's ban on cruel and unusual punishment. This wasn't just a slap on the wrist. This was the government declaring a full-blown constitutional crisis. That lawsuit in 2020 was a huge deal. The Department of Justice wasn't just pointing out a few problems. It was saying the state had failed in its most basic duty: to keep the people in its care alive and safe. The system, they said, wasn't just flawed, it was unconstitutional. So, let's look at what the feds actually found. It's pretty grim. A homicide rate 8 times the national average. Let that sink in. Someone inside an Alabama prison was 8 times more likely to be murdered than in any other state system. And you can see the rest. It's a total breakdown of order, filled with violence, corruption, and even cover-ups by the staff. Okay, so with this bombshell report out, what was the state's response? Well, they proposed what they're calling an Alabama solution. Faced with all this chaos, their big idea was to focus on the buildings themselves. Their answer? Just build new ones. And the heart of this solution is a construction project with a price tag that will make your jaw drop: $1.25 billion for just one new mega prison. And to make it even more controversial, they took $400 million of that from federal COVID-19 relief funds. Money that critics say was supposed to help families and businesses, not build prisons. So here's the plan for that first facility. It's massive, designed for 4,000 people at every security level. Now, the state is really hammering this point. They say it's a bed replacement program. They're trying to shut down the argument that this is about locking up more people. Instead, they say it's about swapping out these old, dangerous buildings for new, modern ones. And here's the official argument, right from Governor Ivey. The idea is that a new building is the essential first step. The logic is, how can you offer real job training or mental health care in these crumbling, violent facilities? They argue these new buildings are the only way rehabilitation can even have a chance to work. But a lot of critics are saying, hang on, you can't just build your way out of a problem that's about culture. They argue the issue isn't really the architecture, it's the whole philosophy behind locking people up. And that has led to a totally different vision, one that focuses on investing in people, not just the buildings they live in. So this alternative is basically a 4-step roadmap. It's a journey, right? It starts with therapy and accountability, moves to practical job skills and education, then to financial responsibility, and finally, it sets up a real plan for them to re-enter society successfully. The goal here isn't just to warehouse people, it's to break the cycle of crime for good. And this is where it gets really interesting: how they'd actually pull this off. Proponents say you can make this happen for everyone by using technology. I mean, we're talking about AI chatbots for mental health support, virtual reality to practice job interviews, and giving inmates tablets so they can get real certifications. It's about using modern tools to solve these deep-rooted problems. And this chart really gets to the heart of it all. It's the current system versus a model inspired by places like Norway. See, Norway focuses on making life in prison as normal as possible to get people ready for release. And the results? Their recidivism rate, which is just the fancy term for how many people end up back in prison, is one of the lowest in the world. But there's this huge problem, sort of the elephant in the room, that could completely sabotage either of these plans. It's the deep-seated corruption that threatens to undo any progress, whether you're in a brand new building or an old one. Which really makes you ask a tough question. If the very people in charge of safety and order are part of the problem, can any of these plans actually work? Can you really build your way out of a crisis of integrity? Just listen to this firsthand account from Rachel Elledge. It's chilling. She says it was like being on the street, but the drug dealers were the corrections officers. It paints a picture of a system that's just rotten from the inside out. So when you boil it all down, we're left with two completely different ideas of what justice should even look like. On one side, you have the belief that public safety comes from punishment and containment, and on the other, you have the belief that real safety comes from helping people change.
This is the ultimate choice. It's really two big bets. The first path is betting billions on concrete and steel, hoping to achieve humane confinement, a safe place where the problem is at least contained. The second path is betting on people, on technology, education, and training to achieve successful re-entry, and to equip people to actually become productive members of society.
The path Alabama chooses is going to define its justice system for generations. But in making that choice, it's also going to answer a question that every single one of us has to grapple with. What actually makes us safer? Stronger walls or restored lives?